The opening scene of The Boy Who Faded sets the tone for the entire film, establishing a haunting atmosphere of loneliness and impending disappearance. The camera lingers in a dimly lit bedroom where a young boy sits alone, surrounded by the remnants of childhood, scattered toys, a half-made bed, and faint traces of life that feel just out of reach. The lighting is muted, casting long shadows that make the room feel both familiar and unsettling, as if something is subtly wrong. The boy does not speak, but his expression carries a quiet sadness, a resignation that suggests this moment is not new to him. He examines his own arm, running his fingers over his skin, and the camera lingers just long enough for the audience to notice something unnatural. His flesh seems slightly translucent, as though he is dissolving into the air around him. There is no dramatic reveal, no sudden shock, just a slow, creeping realization that the boy is fading, both physically and metaphorically. Outside the room, muffled sounds of a television or distant conversation remind us that the world continues without him. The contrast between his silent isolation and the indifferent hum of life beyond his door underscores the film's central theme, neglect so profound that it erases a person entirely. The scene ends without explanation, leaving the audience with a sense of unease, not from a jump scare or overt horror, but from the quiet horror of being unseen. This opening is crucial because it establishes the film's visual and emotional language. There are no monsters, no violent acts, just the slow, inevitable vanishing of a child who no one seems to notice was ever there at all. The horror lies in the silence, in the empty spaces where connection should be, and in the terrifying question: what happens when you disappear and no one even realizes you're gone? The breakfast table scene in The Boy Who Faded is a quiet yet devastating moment that deepens the film's exploration of neglect and invisibility. The camera frames the family in a way that feels both ordinary and unsettling, a typical morning routine, yet charged with an unspoken horror. The boy sits at the table, his presence already slipping. His parents are physically there but emotionally absent. His father hides behind a newspaper. His mother scrolls mindlessly on her phone. The sounds of cutlery clinking and the rustle of pages fill the silence, but no one speaks to him. When the boy tries to say something, perhaps a timid good morning or a hesitant request, his voice is barely a whisper, lost in the void of his parents' distraction. Then comes the moment of chilling symbolism. As he reaches for the cereal box, his fingers pass slightly through it, as if he's no longer solid enough to interact with the world. The camera lingers on his confused, frightened face as he pulls his hand back, staring at it in disbelief. Yet his parents don't react. They don't even notice. This scene is a masterclass in subtle horror. There's no dramatic score, no sudden jump scare. Just the slow, crushing realization that the boy is becoming a ghost in his own home. The horror isn't in what's happening to him, but in the fact that no one cares enough to see it. The breakfast table, a place that should symbolize warmth and family, instead becomes a stage for his erasure. By the time the scene ends, the audience is left with a gnawing dread, not just for the boy's fading body, but for the emptiness of a world that lets children disappear without a second glance. The school hallway is loud with chatter, lockers slamming, and the shuffling of backpacks as students push past one another in a rush to class. But the boy moves through the crowd like a phantom. No one bumps into him, no one meets his eyes. Shoulders that should brush against his pass straight through, as if he's nothing more than a draft of cold air. He turns his head, watching the other kids laugh and shove each other, their voices muffled and distant, as though he's hearing them from underwater. In the classroom, the teacher calls roll, her voice monotone and routine. She reads name after name, and with each one, a student answers, until she reaches his. There's a pause, just a fraction of a second, before she moves on without a second thought. The boy opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. A classmate glances at his desk, squints slightly. Does she see a flicker of movement? A shadow where he sits? But then she blinks and turns away, already forgetting. The camera lingers on his desk as the lesson continues, the teacher's voice droning on about equations or history, something that doesn't matter because he doesn't matter. His fingers grip the edge of the wooden desk, but they leave no warmth behind. His pencil, untouched, rolls slowly to the floor. No one picks it up. The park is bathed in the golden haze of late afternoon, a place that should feel alive with laughter and movement. But for the boy, it is just another space where he exists as a ghost. He sits on a swing, its chains creaking faintly under a weight that seems to grow lighter with each passing second. Around him, children shout and run, their voices bright and careless, but none of them glance his way. The wind carries the scent of cut grass and distant rain, but even the air feels thin around him, as though the world is slowly exhaling him out of existence. Then, something shifts. A girl, smaller than the others, pauses mid-step and turns her head. For the first time in what might be days or weeks, someone's gaze lands on him. Not through him, not past him, but on him. Her brow furrows, not in fear, but in curiosity, as if she's trying to solve a puzzle she didn't realize was there. She raises her hand in a hesitant wave, her fingers splayed like she's testing the air between them. The boy's breath catches. He lifts his own hand, desperate to hold this moment, to prove that he's still real, still here. But before his fingers can even fully rise, a voice calls out, sharp and impatient, and the girl's attention snaps away. Her mother beckons from across the park, and the girl hesitates for just a second, glancing back at the boy as if she might say something. Then she turns and runs, her shoes kicking up small clouds of dust behind her. The swing creaks again, now still. The boy's hand drops to his side, his hope dissolving faster than his body. The camera lingers on his face as the light shifts, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers pulling him into the ground. This was his last chance, and it slipped through his grasp as easily as everything else. By the time the park empties and the streetlights flicker on, there's almost nothing left of him to fade. This scene is the cruelest kind of horror, the moment when salvation is offered, then snatched away. It's not the darkness that terrifies, but the glimpse of light just before it's extinguished. The girl's almost recognition is worse than any outright dismissal, because for the first time, the boy remembers what it feels like to be seen, only to realize too late that it's already over. The park fades around him, and with it, the last trace of his voice, his presence, his name. The house is quiet when the boy returns, but not the comforting kind of quiet. It's the heavy, suffocating silence of a place that has forgotten how to hold warmth. The walls seem to press in, indifferent, as he stands in the hallway, his fingers trailing against the peeling wallpaper, but leaving no mark behind. From the kitchen, the muffled voices of his parents rise and fall in the rhythm of an argument. Not loud, not explosive, just a tired, endless loop of resentment that has nothing to do with him. He might as well be a shadow on the wall for all they notice. He drifts toward the bathroom, drawn to the mirror like a moth to a dying light. When he steps in front of it, his breath hitches. The reflection staring back is barely there. A smudge of features, a suggestion of a boy, like a charcoal sketch half erased. He raises a trembling hand, pressing his palm against the glass, but his reflection doesn't move in time. There's a lag, a disconnect, as if the world is already forgetting how to mimic him. His fingers press harder, desperate for proof, but the surface stays cold and unyielding. The boy who once was slips further away, pixel by pixel, until even his fear can't quite solidify in his throat. Back in his room, he sits on the edge of his bed, the mattress barely dipping under his weight. The toys on the shelf, the posters on the wall, they belong to someone else now, to a boy who was solid enough to leave fingerprints. The air smells faintly of dust and old laundry, the scent of a life unlived. He lies down, curling into himself, as if making himself smaller might slow the inevitable. The ceiling above him blurs, not from tears, but from the simple, horrifying fact that his eyes aren't holding together the way they should. When his mother opens the door later, it's not to check on him, just habit, just the mechanical motion of a parent going through the motions. She hesitates for a fraction of a second, her hand on the doorknob, as if some primal instinct whispers that something is wrong. But the room is empty. The bed is made, and whatever flicker of unease she feels isn't strong enough to make her look twice. She shuts the door, and the click of the latch is the last sound the boy ever hears. This scene is a funeral without mourners. The horror isn't in the grotesque, but in the mundane, the way a person can vanish in increments, each small erasure so insignificant that no one stops to notice until there's nothing left to notice at all. The house doesn't mourn him. The mirror doesn't remember him. And by the time the night settles in, the space where he once was is just that. Space. Empty. Waiting without any expectation to be filled by something else. The bedroom is a graveyard of half-formed memories. A baseball glove collecting dust on a shelf, a notebook left open on the desk with unfinished homework, a nightlight that hasn't been turned on in weeks. The boy lies in bed, but the sheets barely ripple beneath him anymore. His body has become a suggestion, a trick of the light, something the world is slowly taking back. The air hums with the quiet horror of absence, of a space where a child should be, but isn't, not quite. His mother enters, her footsteps muffled by the carpet. She moves on autopilot, her hand already reaching to pull the blanket up, to murmur some half-asleep goodnight. But then she pauses. Her fingers hover over the bed, where the impression of a child should be. There's nothing, just smooth fabric, just empty air. For a moment, just a moment, something flickers in her eyes, a prickle at the back of her neck, a whisper in some deep animal part of her brain that says, "Look closer, something is missing," but the thought slips away before it can fully form. She shakes her head, rubs her temple like she's chasing off a headache, and turns away. The door closes behind her with a soft click. And just like that, he's gone. The camera lingers on the bed, on the pillow where a head should have left a dent. For a few heartbeats, the faintest outline remains, a last, desperate cling to existence. Then, slowly, the fabric smooths itself out, as if nothing was ever there at all. This is horror at its most devastating. Not a scream, but a sigh. Not a disappearance, but an unbecoming. The boy doesn't vanish in a puff of smoke or a swirl of shadows. He simply stops mattering. The world adjusts in his absence without protest, without memory. The sheets grow flat, the air stills, and the terrible, unbearable truth settles over the scene like dust. Some people fade, and no one notices. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.